Welcome to BookShelved.
Welcome to BookShelved. It just started recording. We didn't get a countdown or anything.
We just had to be on it. So
Yeah, welcome everyone.
here we
We are
are.
back.
We are going to be doing our episode. Yes, we're figuring out this lag. So patient with us. Hopefully it all just is very cohesive at the end.
Yeah, here's to hoping.
So this so this week's episode is going to be our review on I think it was August's book of the month that we just released recently. We're a little behind on getting things out to you guys, so forgive us. But the book that we are going to be reviewing is Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Yes, it is a good one.
Do
I'm
you want to
excited
do
to
a
talk
little
about it.
explanation?
Yes, I can. So this one is about it's sad but not really. It's about this girl who she meets this guy and she falls in love with him almost like instantly. It's like one of those like insta love books. So if that's not your jam, you might not like this. But um they fall in love kind of instantly, and then after like 6 months of dating they are like, let's get married, like let's do this thing, you know. And then it was like 10 days after they got married, and they're at home and she asked him to go to the store to get her some like fruity pebbles or something, and he was like, I don't want to go. And she's like, please, or something like that. Or he offered to go and she was like, you don't have to do that. But he ends up deciding to go and he rides his bike to the store. He gets hit by a car and he dies. And this is all in the very beginning of the book. And then the rest of
It's
the book,
literally page two.
yeah. And then the rest of the book is basically her navigating her grief with losing her husband, and then um her, I guess, figuring out how to be present and I guess not a burden to like her friendships and things like that, because her grief kind of takes over her life and she starts treating those around her like crap. And then she becomes friends with her husband's mom, who didn't even know she existed, like had no clue she was even in the picture. And then so it's a lot about them navigating their relationship as a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law, to two people they didn't know anything about. So it's really good. It's obviously difficult at times, and I don't know, overall a really good book, and I wouldn't expect anything else from Taylor Jenkins Reid, really.
Yeah, I will say that so the mother-in-law was horrible
Hmm.
to Elsie.
Yeah.
Like upon discovering that Elsie even existed, because at first you kind of think that maybe Ben and his mom had an estranged relationship. But then it comes to find out that they were actually really close. So Ben's mom kind of thought that Elsie was full of shit. I mean, pretty much point blank. And so that was really interesting because she's like, how dare you try and overstep when you've known my son for 6 months and all of a sudden you're claiming his wife. But love, I feel like probably a lot of people when they're reading this book are like, how dare this mom come in here and be so rude to Elsie? Like they were in love, all this stuff. Um, and yes, Elsie was grieving, but I feel like one of the things I really liked about this book is that it gives a perspective of so many different real life situations that I feel like a lot of people have been in. And I was empathizing with the mom a lot in this book. I was empathizing with her about, having someone that was so close to you die. And then here's X, Y, and Z people who are yes, lovers and have a different relationship, but then being on that, just that the bloodline of just having, a son, or, like the son and parent relationship, and having that taken away from you. And so I could see where her grief was, and where she was kind of taking over of like, this is my child, this is, you know, you don't get to define our relationship type thing. So that being said, I think that she was ugly to Elsie in the beginning of the book, but I wasn't taken back by how she was reacting, if that makes sense.
Right, and I agree. I there were some moments where I was like, man, she's being really aggressive. But on the other hand, like Elsie was being very aggressive to her friend. So she wasn't like this innocent person in her grief either. And I shouldn't say innocent in her grief, like everybody's grief is their own story and their own struggles and things like that. But she couldn't turn around and be mad at the mom when she was doing the same thing to her best friend. Um, I really thought that Elsie was ugly to her friend. Like, holy, that was that was a lot. So her friend, just to like give you guys some context, her
Yeah.
friend came in and basically took care of Elsie through everything. Was like, I'm not gonna leave your side. I'm gonna sleep on your couch. I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna make sure you eat. I'm here for you. Like, what can I do? What
She
can
was a
I
great friend throughout that.
yeah, it was really good. And then in turn, Elsie treated her like crap, was like snapping at her for everything. Like, how dare you ask me if I want anything to eat? How can I eat in a time like this? Like, you're such a horrible person, like stuff like that. And it was like, okay, like through the whole book pretty much until like the very end of the book, she finally came around and was like, "Hey, I love you. Thank you for everything." Um, to the point where like her friend even found fell in love with somebody. And it was she didn't tell Elsie that she had even met anyone because I mean, why would you when Elsie was being psychotic to her? And Elsie lost her shit and was like, "You can't love anyone," like all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh God." you know.
No, it was so ugly. I remember, I think I was almost done, maybe like three-quarters of the way through the book, but I think she got mad at Ben when Ben wanted, they were like going down to Vegas to get hitched. And he was kind of getting cold feet because he was like, I should wait and tell my mom. And then she like lost her shit and was like, you have me down here. Like, you don't need to tell your mom, like all this stuff. And I remember I like sent you a picture of the scene and I was like, Elsie's toxic. Like,
Right.
she was really toxic. And I definitely want to like pay respect to those really fast burning loves that you like fall in love and that's like, yes, like that's it. But I also, I, ah, this is just like hot take. I feel like someone would come at me for saying this, but I just feel like like, and I'm not going to say any sort of timeline of the grief, but the intensity of how she treated everybody around her for that period of time for something that was so short-lived. I don't I don't know, maybe some people do react like that and I'm really just discounting people's feelings, but I feel like that was definitely like heightened in the sense of this book and at sometimes was a little unbelievable in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely toxic women out there like that, though. Because, like, I thought the same thing. And to the point where I'm like, if I was him, I would feel like I was being pressured into it or rushed into it. Because for them to be, yeah, they were on their way to Vegas and they agreed, let's go to Vegas and get married. But he's allowed to be halfway to Vegas and be like, hold on, like, is this like, do we want to do this? Do we want to get married without telling my mother, who I'm very close with? And he's allowed to do that. And for her to just be like, oh, you don't love me, and how dare you make me get in this car and drive? He didn't make you do anything. You both decided.
Mm-mm.
And now that he's trying to like think about it from more from a space that's not just like clouded with love and rainbows and freaking heart eyes, um, and be an adult about it. She lost her shit. And then he was like, okay, let's go get married. You know?
Yeah, it definitely felt yeah, I don't know. It took me kind of a while to read this book. Granted, I had a lot of stuff going on like why it took me a while to read the book, but felt like there were so many instances like that when I would pick up the book to like start reading it that I was just I think it made me dislike the book like more and
Hmm,
more. And I think it's not, maybe not necessarily the book, but like her character so much. And I couldn't differentiate the book versus the character. It was very much like I felt like Elsie was writing this book for me to read. Like I was
right.
definitely taking Jenkins Reid out of the whole equation. But yeah, I will say like I think what the whole premise what of the book was was that finding I guess like the friendship, like gaining a friendship through like such an ugly time in that relationship. And so I do want to say that I think that Elsie and Ben's mom's relationship did grow to be something really beautiful.
Hmm.
And there was like a beautiful purpose of it for, because so Ben's mom lost her husband. So now she's a widow and her only son is deceased. So now she's just fully by herself. And then here's Elsie, who doesn't have a good relationship with her parents. And so they're able to find each other with that mother-daughter relationship and help each other grieve. And so I do think that that was a really beautiful message of, and I think that you could even generalize it down so much so to say that when two people have experienced grief and like the loss of someone that they love, it really does give you that common ground. Some would say a trauma bond.
Hmm.
And, to take off from there. And, I feel like that's a really relatable thing for people to know somebody else that's been through a similar trauma and that just kind of takes away all the awkward like hi I'm so and so like for me if you have a dead dad like immediately I want to be your friend. I'm like we've lived a very similar life, like let's talk about everything, and just because we have that same trauma, let's be besties. And
Right.
so I think that that's like I think throughout this book it was just so relatable in so many different aspects for different people. And I think that's what Taylor Jenkins Reid does so well with this book. And yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think the best part about this book was like I agree the story between Elsie and Ben's mom. I think that was like the best part of the whole thing. Aside from that, this definitely is like my least favorite book from Taylor Jenkins Reid. I just as like time has gone on since I've read it, I don't think about it. The only time I do think about it is when we're talking about how we needed to film this episode. And then I'm like, oh shit, I have to remember what happened in this book, you know? And I do remember it. It's not like
Yeah.
it's one of those books that I forget, but it's one of those I just don't think about. Um, and that could also be because I haven't lost a parent aside from my husband's dad, who I was very close to, but I haven't personally lost my mom or my dad. So it's it probably hits me a little differently than it does those who have lost a personal parent, you know?
Yeah. And I will say like having that experience from that, I didn't resonate much with Elsie. That being said, I've never lost a partner. So, um, I've had like exes in the past who have died and but I wasn't like actively like with them or like in love with them or anything like that. So that part wasn't relatable to me. So I can't stand that for the people that have lost love, especially a love that was so fiery and just hot right off of the get-go and was just so passionate. Um, but like I've talked about in the past, of my dad passing away, I have a stepmom, and my stepmom and I always had such a close relationship. And as soon as my dad died, like she turned ugly to me. Like it was very like, poor me, poor me, poor me, the love of my life. Oh no, poor me. And so she was my stepmom, but she was like my dad's girlfriend. So
Mm-hmm.
legally, I was the one that had to like handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I relate so much with Ben's mom, because I'm like, yes, I get it. You guys loved each other. This was beautiful, all that. But, I have to separate my personal emotions with the legality of like, all of these things that have to be done, including like a funeral and all these things. Like
Right.
they can't wait until I'm ready to deal with it. You have to get your shit done, and so there was not that coming from those sides. So honestly, when I was reading this, I very much resonated with Ben's mom, and I think that's why I excused some of her ugliness a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I partially had a little bit of just like a ugh about Elsie, because I just felt very like, I don't know, it really really hit on just like an experience of mine. And so I think like it is interesting, because I bet there's people who very much disagree with my stance on this and are just like, poor Elsie, that mom's a bitch, like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the whole time I was reading it, I was thinking about that, like just
Mm.
the dual perspectives on it.
I don't know though that people would be thinking that about your opinion though, because when reading this, I was like, okay, I don't even know, was it 6 months that they had been dating? Like it had been so short.
I think
Um,
it was like 5 to 6.
yeah, like it was such a short amount of time that even while I was reading it, I was like, okay. But I had the same viewpoint as the mom for the very first part of their interactions was like, it's been 6 months. Like, and then I very much had the viewpoint of like the best friend. At some point, the best friend was like, it's been 6 months. Like you barely knew the guy really, and like you still have your whole life ahead of you, and like you're acting like you lost your partner of 40 years. And but I know that way of thinking is not the right way of thinking. Like you can love somebody so deeply after just 6 months of getting to know someone. Like and it could even be said that that's like a stronger love almost because it's still that like burning, passionate, like fresh new love that's just so strong.
Mhm.
Where after like a season, like a lifetime together, the love is very much strong there. But it's not like that
The
overwhelming,
passion.
burning, passionate love. So it could go either
Mhm.
way, I think. But I don't think people would view your viewpoint, or your opinions on the book as like anything negative. I think both points are very valid, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's why I obviously I like this book. I want to like tread carefully, because like my ratings I feel like kind of contradict what I'm about to say, but like that's why I liked this book, was um um because of just like the duality of it, and about how it could really resonate with different people in
Hmm.
different ways, and how so many different people could feel seen. And yeah, so I did like that.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so in honor of that, do you want to go through some of the questions in the back of the book? So this is
Uh,
another one of those things where the book has questions, and I love that, just to kind of see like on us to take away from this book.
right. I think we can just do a couple of these to keep this one short, but because I'm sure we've actually talked on a lot of this. But the first one I want to do
Mhm.
because it captured my attention and I'm really curious about your opinion is the enhance your book club questions in the back. There's only 5 of them. And it says, if Ben hadn't gone out for Fruity Pebbles that night, if he had lived, what do you think would have been in store for Elsie and Ben's marriage? And do you think Elsie would be close to Susan?
Ooh,
I know.
um,
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your
I
answer on this.
think I do feel like they had the foundation to have like a meaningful marriage. Like I do. I feel like passion was there, and I think that they would have carried on like a beautiful life. As far as the Elsie and Susan, so Susan being the mother-in-law, I don't know. I think there would have been a lot of points of contention, and I think it would have been weird for a while because I think there would have been that like, well, why didn't my son tell me about you? Like, why didn't you let him tell me or tell me about you? Like, why did you allow that to be okay? So I think it would have been ugly for a while. Um, and I think they would have bonded eventually. I don't know if they would have had this close of a relationship because I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Stereotypically speaking, I feel like sons and mothers have like that weird relationship that another woman coming in, especially with the loss of her husband. So there isn't
Mhm.
like the extra partner to be like, okay, Susan, like calm the fuck down. Like she's a nice girl, like
Right.
but yeah, I think they would have been fine. I don't think they would have been as close, but I think that eventually they would have had more of a relationship. What about you?
So I don't think that they'd be very close. I think the mom would like her, and that's about it. Um, but I definitely, maybe it's because I'm a boy mom. I don't know, but I just like think about how like she would be like, okay, you guys got married after how long, and then that would like just kind of always be on her mind. And I think they would struggle a lot. Definitely at the beginning, I think it would be a struggle for them to get along. But I also kind of feel like these two would their marriage wouldn't last because
Really?
he didn't she like go through his phone and like or he was like friends with an ex or something and she was like that's not okay or something. I don't know. There was something weird that like it wasn't just the I could be thinking of something else, but I felt like they had like friction points,
Oh,
not
I feel
just
like I
like
kind of know what
dating.
you're talking about. It was like, I think it was just that he had an ex, like
Oh yeah,
in
an
general, for
ex
what I remember.
texted
And like,
him. Yeah, an ex texted him and it was somebody who
yeah.
he would occasionally hook up with. And then they were like, what was it, a week into their relationship and this girl hits him up and he was like, "Hey, like I think he didn't even respond to the message or something like that." And Elsie like lost her shit. She went crazy and she was like, "I just think it's messed up that she's messaging you." And then so then he turns around and he's like, "Hey, I'm like I'll change my voicemail." And he changed his voicemail to be like, I'm busy indefinitely, like like all this stuff. And so I just feel like that
Forgot
was
about
like,
that.
yeah, that was like a crazy. I think she's a little crazy, and I don't think it would have lasted because Ben seemed like such a genuinely sweet man. And like, so to like be with this psycho controlling person, I don't think it would have lasted. And the mom would have seen right through
No,
that.
I agree. Yeah. Now I forgot about that scene. So now that you brought that up, yeah. She was toxic. Like
Yeah.
she was toxic. But and
Mhm.
that's the thing, like not to totally put on like I'm not like branding relationships by all
Yeah.
means, but I feel like that's kind of a characteristic of those really hot, fast, passionate, burning relationships that start off so quickly. Like I can think of one couple that they were head over heels saying they loved each other within the first month. And, they were together for so many years, loved each other. They're divorced now. So it's like after I think probably like 4 or 5 years, they're like sayonara. So I mean, definitely that works for people. I
Yeah.
just feel like characteristically speaking of some relationships, that is kind of common to see because you have your like rose colored glasses on for
Right.
sure. I have a question that's not in the book. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's not in the book because I haven't fully read all the questions, but I thought of you, and I just want to know what your opinion would be like. Like, think back to when you first started dating Johan, and you were
Hmm.
just like, "I love this guy. He's so great." And then you find out that he's obsessed with reading YA novels aimed for like 12-year-old girls. How
Oh
would you
yeah.
feel about that?
Was that yeah, it was this guy. Okay. Um,
Yeah, because I felt some type of way about it.
I mean, is it any different than like marrying a gamer who is into like Dungeons and Dragons or like something like that. Like Johann is not into Dungeons and Dragons, but like I don't know, like I don't know. It's weird because we read books and there's people who like YA and people who don't. And then I also feel like YA gets a bad rep because it's called YA. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I would look at him and be like, yeah, that's your thing. I I know for sure I would not take his entire inheritance and buy a library full of YA books and then donate them. I know for a fact I would not do that. That's just a big slap
No.
in his face, I think, in my opinion. But you do what you want with
If
your
if
money. But
I felt like sh- Taylor Jenkins Reid was like trying to make that more of like a thing, and it just didn't really feel like it was a
when
thing. You know, it
when
didn't feel
I
like, oh,
heard
this whole book really came to a close.
when I read that part, I was like, that no, don't do that because I would not do that with money that I got from an inheritance. Like that money, could you I couldn't imagine taking somebody's money that they worked hard for, saved for, died for, and then spending it all in a blink of an eye and it be on something like that. Like you would think that that person who passed away would be like, "Hey, please use this money to make your life easier for the future since I'm not here to help support anymore." Like take that money, invest it, like do all these things. Don't go buy a bunch of freaking library full of YA novels and then donate them. Like,
You
I
know,
don't
if
know.
that was his like, if that was his thing, if he was obsessed with YA books and
Yeah,
obsessed with letting everybody in the whole world read all these books, but he wasn't.
he
Like that was
wasn't.
something that she was into, like the whole book thing. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, my mom and I used to read these books." So that there's a common ground for us, but it wasn't a burning desire of his to have access to all, like
Right.
I mean, I did like if she, her going that route, I was like, okay, I'm glad at least that as soon as they got musty, they couldn't be there because then that is kind of an honor of Ben a little bit. But I agree. I didn't feel like that was the grand finale of this book.
No.
I didn't feel
Yeah,
like
because
that
that's
really
what they
did much
treated
for
it
me at
like.
all.
Yeah, they treated it like it was the grand finale of the
Hmm.
book and that thing that was supposed to like make you cry in the end. And it was just like, no, it fell so flat for me. And I think this is
No.
one of Taylor
Yeah.
Jenkins Reid's earlier um
Hmm.
books. So I get it. We have 10 minutes left before Zoom shuts us out. But
Okay.
um so I'm giving her grace in this because her Hollywood series
What
like
did
Evelyn
she
Hugo and uh,
2013?
yeah, so Evelyn Hugo and Malibu Rising and Daisy Jones, like all those books are just so strong. And I mean, you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. I agree. No, I thought it was good. I mean, I liked it for I think the bones of the book. I think the
Right,
story kind of fell a bit short for me.
right,
Um, I think that it like cinematically it could be something with more drama, more I don't know. I feel like there could have been a little more oomph to it. So I
right.
think that the bones are really good there, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't read as many of her books as you have, but I've read Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, and I just bought Malibu Rising, so I do plan on reading that one. But based on the two that I have read, this one I had higher expectations, but you did have a good point with it being one of her earlier ones, and it shows.
Right. Yeah. I think it was good overall, but there's just a lot about it. So I would probably give it like a 2.5 or 3 star.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Out of feeling bad about rating one of her books a 2.5, I'd rate it a 3, but
Yeah.
But honestly speaking, I also wasn't like dying to read this book. You
No.
know, like yes, I was busy, but I definitely had to force myself to read this book a little bit. And it took me probably like 5 weeks to read this book. And it wasn't that long of a book. It wasn't, one that you really had to digest on long. And yeah, I mean, it was 300 pages and it took me like 5 to 6 weeks to read it. Um, yeah, I'm glad that we read it. I remember seeing it and just kind of feeling gravitated towards it. I will say though, we've talked about this just like personally, but this cover is horrible.
Oh, it's
Like it is so
atrocious.
it's it's so pixelated. I feel like you can't really tell in this video right now, but it looks like I did this cover in my free Canva
Yeah,
and
it
just
is
like
so
zoomed the picture
pixelated.
as much as I could.
Yeah, and like even her
And
picture
I'm
on the back
confused.
is super pixelated. But
hmm Yeah, don't let it fool you. That's not our camera showing the pixelations. That is literally the book. And I'm confused about all of this too, because you would think this cover would have been like the very first cover to come out, but it has a little bit in the back of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and it talks about it on the front. So you know that this had to have been out more recently than when it first came out, if
yeah,
that
like they
makes
did
sense.
reprintings of it when her other books were starting to come up and edited what they put in the back. Yeah, it's really strange. I probably will definitely donate this book. It's not something I'm going to recommend to people. And I mean, if somebody were to ask me about it, I would be like, yeah, it's good, read it. Um, I won't rave about it or anything, but I'm also not going to keep this. I'm gonna donate this. Put it in my little free library. I'm trying to make that a point now. Is
I
if I don't
feel
like
like
it, it's getting donated.
You know, I like that. And normally every book I read, I'm like, I have to keep this book, but I actually feel the same. I will be getting rid of it. Yeah, it
So
was good.
it's
I'm glad I
not
read it. I won't read it again.
bookshelvable.
It is not bookshelvable. Bottom line point blank. But we read it.
Okay.
Well, this is first of many episodes like this that y'all will be seeing. So forgive us for any sort of lag or weirdness. We will be spending the next 7 business days figuring this out to let this sound and look beautiful for you guys. But yeah, I mean, this episode is the closing of season 1 of Bookshelved, and we are about to launch season 2 in the next week or two. So thank you guys so much for your continued support. Amanda, I love you. And I'm so happy that we've been doing this for the last 6 months now.
Isn't it crazy? And I'm glad that we're still continuing it because we could have easily been like, oh, you're moving to Pennsylvania. Like, I guess we're not doing the podcast anymore. But I hope we can keep this up, even if our upload rate is lower because you're going to be a busy college student. But I'm excited and make sure you follow us on Instagram because we are coming up to the first of the month. So maybe we'll announce our book of the month on there so we're not too far behind and we can make sure we can get it up early for you guys. And we'll get this video up because we still haven't like fully fleshed out what our October book is. We want it to be spooky and not spooky, but we want it to be October themed kind of. So we'll flesh that
Vibes.
out and yeah. So make sure you go to our Instagram and follow us there. And if we announce it there, you'll see it there. But yeah, I'm excited to keep this going.
Yeah, I know, me too. So thank you guys for listening in. And I forgot my punchline.
Signing off.
Signing off.